Alright, good morning folks. It's a little bit sunny now, probably more sunny than cloudy, but it's going to be rainy later today. The winds are supposed to come up tomorrow, so I'm going to head right on into Red Rock today, a day early, because I don't want to be contending with the wind that's coming tomorrow. It's going to be 15 or more tomorrow, earlier in the day than I thought, so I need to get going. One of the puzzling things is my weather says the wind is supposed to be southeast right now, but it's northeast, which doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. So we'll see. Maybe when I get out in the open, it'll change directions. There's some high terrain around here, so that can affect the wind. A little premature end of the trip, but I think it'll be better in the long run. I hope I didn't get too cold going across here. It's going to be 3-hour trip, I suppose, something like that. Maybe a little less. So everything's running so far. Hopefully that'll continue. And the wind will not be contrary when I get out there into Nipigon Bay. I got to go through the straits. That's at least 6 miles. No, it's more than that. 10 miles here to get through the straits. And another 13 or so to get across the bay to Red Rock. So we got a long trip today, longest leg of the trip. And I'll run out of gas probably before I get out of the straits. So I'll have to switch tanks to auxiliary then. So anyway, stick with me. We'll report back once we know a little bit more. But unfortunately the sun is out. The wind is on the nose, which isn't a bad thing as long as it stays light. So we'll hope that holds for a crossing, and that the wind doesn't get about, I think it's forecast to be about 6 to 7 miles an hour, and that should be fine as long as it stays that way. So we'll talk to you later. Well, I just ran out of gas a lot quicker than I thought. I thought I was going to get another 5 to 6 miles down the road here, but I only got 6/10 of a mile. I didn't even get out of the harbor here before I ran out of gas. So I hooked up the auxiliary tank. That should be enough to get me into Red Rock. So we'll hope for the best on that. I still have another auxiliary, so I've got plenty of fuel. The changeover went pretty quick, no problems there. So we'll continue on. All right, we're moving right along here. I've got about 3 miles that we've gone. Should be coming up in another 3 miles. The first place I anchored the night I came out of Red Rock on the start of the trip. Right now the sun is breaking through a little bit, but there is some clouds apparently moving in. And as you can see, the water's reasonably calm. I'm hoping that it stays that way, especially when I get out in the big bay. So right now we're moving along just fine, and no activity. I haven't seen any boats, no people. Went by one cabin back there, but I didn't see anybody. So we're moving right along. I think my plan is that when I get to Red Rock, and of course I assume I'm getting there, I'm going to probably pull the boat out instead of getting a slip for the night, because if it's going to rain tonight and maybe in the morning, I may need to try to get as much done today as I can. So I'm not having to work in the rain. So the tentative plan, we'll see how it works out as we get into Red Rock. Okay folks, I just passed Floor Island to starboard and entering Nipigon Straits. Just passing buoy here right now on my port, November 5, which kind of marks entering the Straits, Nipigon Straits. You see that in the background there. Currently I'm abeam the first night out that I had in crossing Nipigon Bay, the anchorage that I stayed at that first night. So I'm made up for that leg that I thought I was going to do today, which was about 6.8 miles. Instead, I'm heading straight on to Red Rock. I'm in the Nipigon Straits, and I think it's about 4 miles thereabouts to the entrance to Nipigon Bay. So I'm hoping that right now the seas, as you can see behind me, are in good shape, nice and flat. and I hope that holds. There is some threatening buildups around here, so I could see rain and even some thunderstorms later, but I'm hoping that'll hold off. My ETA, I'm guessing, is going to be around noon to about 12:30, somewhere in there, depending on what speed I can hold crossing the bay. The bay itself is about 13 and a half miles or so. We'll see how that goes. I'll update you once I get into the bay itself, Nipigon Bay, and give you an idea what the conditions are when we get there. Okay, folks, I'm just entering Nipigon Bay. I've got the points both sides, starboard and port, and I'm pretty much right in the entry. You can see behind me the seas, and the wind is pretty much what it was, and holding. I pray that it will hold until I get across. It's about like I said, about a 13 and a half mile stretch, and a lot can change. There are some thunderstorms around. Nothing violent close by that I can see. Maybe one off to the northeast that looks like some rain coming out of it. Maybe a little darker to the west, but otherwise it's pretty good. So I'm hoping I can stay dry. I've got the windshield down so I can see better going forward. A lot of times I'll pull up that shield if it's not raining or it's really cold. And today the wind's behind me, so that makes it warmer. I've got a power boat coming up behind me too, but he's not catching me, or at least very slowly if he is. Kind of a white looking boat. Of course, a lot of boats are, so it's hard to tell, but it could be that cruiser that I kayaked by yesterday. Steel cruiser is tied up in the channel down by the fish camp. So see if he ever passes me. He could be heading to Red Rock too, so we'll see if he get out here. But anyway, that's the update. Just another update here. I'm doing about 8.5 miles per hour, which is pretty good. I'm turning at a 3,000 RPM, about normal, 2,900, 3,000, but speed is really good. Part of that is because the wind is behind me. What little there is, there's only about 6 miles an hour. That helps, and moving along really good. I'll make good time getting into Red Rock, so I don't know if it'll be noon, but it's probably closer to 12:30 before I get there. But with this speed, I could get in there earlier than I think, because I'm really making good time. 8.5, 8.4 miles per hour. Coming into Red Rock, had a little bit rock and roll out there when I was in the open. For the most part, it's been okay. The crossing. Now we need to just get to a dock and be secured. See some of the terrain off to the left there, coming into Red Rock. I'm going to have to stop and rig up my fenders and lines and stuff before I come in. But right now I'm just approaching. I got about a mile here to go yet. So, good evening, folks. Sitting here after dinner, relaxing, having a glass of wine. Haven't had my evening dessert yet, but I'll do that later. Decided to I came in a day early on to Red Rock, which you knew from the previous videos. Had a little trouble getting into the dock, but I had a hand on shore on the docks, came out to help, and that saved the day because the wind was blowing me right off the dock. And with this high sides of this boat, it's just goes with the wind real easily, so it's very difficult to bring it in upwind. Anyway, we got in successfully. Took a couple tries to get it, but we made it. Loaded the boat up on the trailer. All of that went okay. And brought it in, did some work, started putting things away and getting the trailer and the rig ready for the road. I will take one leg to Grand Marais, Minnesota tomorrow. I can't remember the time, but it's about 3 hours, a little less than 3 hours. Stay overnight there, visit some friends, and then I'll head on down to Forest Lake, which is where I staged with this boat. Drop the boat and rig there, take the car home Tuesday. Brings the trip to a halt at that point. So far, everything's gone well. I think the only scare I had on the trip that was substantial was the first crossing on the first day across Nipigon Bay, which I just came across today. The wind was much stronger. It made it very challenging, to say the least. There were a lot of prayers being said as I got into some bigger waves, and the spray was going right over the boat. Fortunately, going into the wind is a lot easier. It can take a lot more wind going into the wind than it can going downwind because of the low stern on this boat. I did add splash guards to my stern this year. especially if you're coming up here on Superior, because this is a risky place to have this boat anyway. There's just too much open water when you go out on the islands. As long as you stay in the islands, you're pretty safe, but if you are open to a stretch there, sometimes it can be 150 miles or more of water. So the fetch is long, and it doesn't take much wind to get waves going. And this boat is not designed for much in the way of waves. I think the crossing that I made that first day, waves were maybe 3.5, 4 at the most. That was too much. That was way too much. Just is not designed for that, and it was a little scary, to say the least. The rest of the trip, though, went well. I just planned it around the winds and didn't move unless I thought it was pretty safe. And that's one of the reasons I came home a day early. I came into Red Rock today a day early because of the winds that are forecast for tomorrow are similar to what I had when I crossed the first time, and I didn't want to face that again. Pulled the boat out. It's on the trailer right now. As I speak, I'm on the trailer, and I'll spend the night here on board and then take off first thing in the morning. That'll work best anyway because there's some forecast rain. We did have some sprinkles on the crossing today, but not much rain. But there's supposed to be more tonight, so I'm hoping that it's dry enough in the morning for me to complete the work I need to do. There's not much to do outside to get ready. Just tighten up the lines on the kayak, bring the grill in from the stern. I don't like to travel with that on the stern. There's just too much weight there. It could be too hard on the rails because they're mounted to a wood deck, and when you got all that much weight up on the top of the rails, there's just too much leverage there. So I pull that off, set it inside for on-the-road travel. Otherwise, we're good to go. I'm going to just sit here and relax this evening, maybe do some reading, listen to an audiobook, call it a day. As soon as it starts getting a little darker, I'll hit the sack early. It was a long day, a long crossing. I went 22 plus miles was the distance. Like I say, we got 2 days of travel to get home. Second leg is 250 miles from Grand Marais to back to my home, but to Grand Marais, I think it's about 145 miles or so. That's a pretty easy leg to do tomorrow, so it'll be a short trip. But it is supposed to rain, so it did rain when I came up too. A lot of the trip has been rainy and more windy than I expected. The weather has not been typical late July and August, which is usually dog days and flat calm, no wind, very little rain except for some thunder showers. That just hasn't been the case on this trip. Sometimes that happens. There you go. Have a good evening.